According to the original and only story in the Bible relating to Ishmael's ancestry, Hagar was the mother of Ishmael and the servant of Sarah. Her name, as the mother of the most illustrious forefather of the Arabs, Ishmael, is conspicuously and surprisingly absent from the Quran. What are the facts?
You are of course correct in saying that the name of Hagar is never mentioned in the Quran. But this should not be a surprise to anyone who has studied it or listened to our series. After all, the following extremely important names are also absent from the all-knowing Quran: Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem, Sarah, the wife of Abraham, and Eve, the mother of humanity. As we have amply and repeatedly shown, the Quran is a tossed salad of plagiarized, plundered, pirated, and perverted precepts, thoughts, concepts, and ideas from the Bible, New Testament, pagan Arabian religion, and Zoroastrian Persian religion, their fetishes, their traditions, and their scriptures. Muhammad in his Quran conveniently and mendaciously Islamized all of them, pretending they are novel and newly created concepts and revelations. We all know, based entirely on the evidence at hand, that these are pure fabrications and lies. In the whole biography of Muhammad, Sirat Rasulullah by Ibn Ishaq, the name of Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, is not mentioned at all also. In fact, the name Hagar appears only once in the interpretation section of the Quran by Abdullah Yusuf Ali to explain Al-Baqarah 2.158, note 160. According to imaginary and falsified Arab traditions, Hagar and Ishmael, in this case as a baby and accompanied in their exile by Abraham, had their thirst quenched at the well of Zamzam near Mecca, almost 1,000 desert miles away from Beersheba in Canaan. According to the Torah, which is after all the original and only source of the story, Hagar and Ishmael found water near Beersheba and not in the desolation of Arabia near Mecca. The alleged Arab traditions, which are of course totally unfounded, unsubstantiated, and contrary to the historical and archaeological records, Canaan and Mount Sinai too are in Arabia. Let us now recite the original and only source in the Bible. Chapter 16, Genesis 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bore him no children, and she had a maidservant, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, Behold now, the Lord has prevented me from bearing. I beg you, go in to my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in to Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. Abram said to Sarai, Behold, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as it pleases you. And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she, Hagar, fled from her face. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, where did you come from? And where will you go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Behold, you are with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall live in the presence of all his brothers. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. Genesis chapter 21.1. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said. And the Lord did to Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old, when his son Isaac was born to him. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. And she said to Abraham, Cast out this slave and her son, for the son of this slave shall not be heir with my son, with Isaac. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. And God said to Abraham, Let it not be grievous in your sight because of the lad and because of your slave. In all that Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice. For in Isaac shall your seed be called, and also of the son of the slave will I make a nation, because he is your seed. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and took bread and a bottle of water, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of the God called to Hagar from heaven, and said to her, What ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in your hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad to drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and lived in the wilderness, and became an archer. And he lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took for him a wife from the land of Egypt. Our listeners, believers and unbelievers, should take note of the following important items when comparing the Quranic version of the same events with the biblical originals above. 1. Ishmael was born in Canaan near Beersheba to a Hebrew father and an Egyptian mother. 2. God repeatedly asserts that only Isaac is deemed the divinely elect son and not Ishmael. 3. Only the seed of Isaac was to inherit the blessing of the promised land. 4. Ishmael was a teenager of over 14 years of age when he and his mother were sent away from Abraham's tribe, and not the baby that the Quran asserts he was. 5. Ishmael and his mother Hagar resided thereafter in the wilderness of Paran, in southern Canaan, and never in the Arabian Peninsula near the Kaaba or Mecca. 6. Neither the Kaaba nor Mecca nor Allah are ever mentioned in the Bible. It stands to reason that if the God of the pagan Arabs, Allah, was the same as the God of Israel, he would have at the very least mentioned their name somewhere in his Torah. 7. Abraham never visited the Kaaba nor Mecca in the biblical narrative. 8. Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac had no knowledge of a God called Allah. 9. Abraham, Hagar, and the baby Ishmael never went to the Kaaba or to Mecca according to the original and only biblical story. 10. Since the Torah was asserted by the Quran itself as revealed directly to Moses Kalimullah by Allah and is considered divine, it beggars logic and intellect to believe that Allah, if he were the God of Israel, would have revealed two contradictory versions of the same events. 11. If Ishmael were elect of Allah instead of Isaac, why were all the prophets of the Bible from the seed of Isaac and none from Ishmael's seed? In conclusion, it is self-evident as usual that the Quranic stories are unfounded, untrue, inauthentic, and total lies, and no follower of Muhammad in the world can, based on all the knowledge that it is available to everyone, disprove our accusations or statements.